Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. In this video we're venturing back into the 8th Book of Sorrows once again. Whilst previously we talked about Eris Morn and the newly discovered Deck of Whispers, the nature of her transformation and her new place as the Hive God of Vengeance, this time we're actually getting what appears to be a much more contemporary entry from the perspective of Savathun. In this latest entry, it also appears that she reveals her thoughts on the nature of her siblings, Oryx and Xivu-Arath. To understate the importance of this entry in particular would be to do you all a disservice, because the insight granted particularly by Savathun's ideas of what Xivu-Arath's priorities are gives us an idea of what it might take to wrench her from the Witness's control, and it tells us what she might do afterwards. It's a bit of good and a bit of bad news, and if this can be trusted, I think it makes it a very important lore entry. But first, a word from our sponsors over at Advanced GG. This has probably been the sponsor with the best response on the channel from everyone who's watching the videos, so yeah, I'm really excited to bring this to you again. We sold so many of my ice shakers previously that Advanced GG and I are actually cooking up something super secret that's coming soon, but for now, if you haven't tried their shakers and drink supplements already, it's a great time to start. Advanced GG is the only clinically proven gaming supplement that actually improves your gaming performance. It has been shown to do so. It's based on a natural, healthier green tea caffeine which improves focus, concentration, and memory, helping you react faster, make better decisions on the fly, and reduce your error rate in gaming. It also has no sugar, it's sugar-free, it's keto-friendly, vegan-friendly, and is rich in vitamins B and C. The actual energy spike itself when you're drinking it feels really consistent too. From experience, I can tell you that it's about a 4 to 6 hour burst of energy, and it doesn't have a nasty crash near the end, which is really great. If you're struggling with other things in your life that really do provide you the caffeine you need to get through the day, but also give you that horrible sense at the end of it that you just need to go to bed, try Advanced GG. My wife ended up using it, no joke, and it actually works really wonderfully for her too. So yeah, use the link in the description, or use code BIFE or LoreDaddy, that's with a capital L and a capital D and no spaces, at checkout, and you can get 10% off your purchase. Thanks again to Advanced GG for sponsoring this video. Anyway, back to the lore. So, before we start, we should really talk a little bit more about how this record from Savathun's perspective is even possible. Savathun is dead, after all, right? Well, I suppose lowercase d dead, given that she's dead but Immaru still lives. And yes, she isn't currently capable of speaking or writing or projecting her perspectives as best we know, but that's the strange thing about this particular part of the 8th Book of Sorrow. I don't think that this is actually Savathun in the contemporary now. I think it's Savathun slightly in the past, but certainly not in the ancient past. It's worth remembering that the nature of this book is strange because it manifests as we tithe to Eris Morn, and this might have something to do with the way that the 8th Book of Sorrow is formatted. Eris states that the Deck of Whispers binds her to Xivu-Arath and Savathun, and that, strangely enough, the deck seems to pull from all three of them in a way that's quite revealing and uncomfortable. And so this perspective is perhaps drawn, at least if we're to believe everything of the books at face value, without Savathun's immediate consent, just in the same way that it was for Eris, perhaps in the same way that it will be for Xivu-Arath. From what we can tell of the perspective as well, it's really interesting, because the perspective itself is one that's based on a time when Savathun had not yet accepted the light. At least, that's what I can best tell of it. But before we go into that in a bit more depth, I think we need to give it a little bit of a note on the Deck of Whispers once more, and that is this. I will say it now, and I will say it many a time again. I don't think we can understand the Deck of Whispers truly, and I don't think we can completely trust it either. And there's two reasons for that. First of all the entries in the Books of Sorrow are suspect. In the margins of one of the book entries in the original Books of Sorrow, Savathun, quite prophetically perhaps, wrote, "These books are full of lies." Maybe she had an idea that the Book of Sorrow that Oryx had written, the 5 verses, were all sort of self-aggrandizing, but I don't think even Savathun knew the extent of the deception that they represented. The entirety of the Hive's history is based on a lie. knowing that the Witness and Rulk manipulated their parts in the story so that the Hive were forced into this terrible bargain and believed that they had no other way forward. This is what makes the history so suspect. But even outside of that, it's self-serving. It's a narrative presented by Oryx that seems to pull from the perspectives of the Worm Gods and even Savathun and Xivu Arath on time to time, but it doesn't necessarily always give us the perfectly accurate truth. This is something we need to keep in mind when reading the 8th Book of Sorrow. This is a problem because we still don't know who the writer behind the Book of Sorrows is, and that's really our second problem. If we knew where these entries came from, we might be able to understand them a little bit better, but we don't know who wrote them, we don't understand how they appear properly, and as a result, we don't know the purpose of the 8th book from the perspective of its creator. As best we know, the book just manifests to us through the Deck of Whispers as we tithe to Eris, and that she is just distributing its words to us. We still don't know who made it. We still don't know who wrote it. We still don't know if it is just, as is stated, this spontaneous act of creation through hive magic and power, manifesting as a book that we all believe and read. We still also don't know if this is all a trick. So as we jump into these perspectives, no matter who we're reading the perspective of in the book, I want you all to keep in mind that there's still a lot we don't know about it. Scarily enough, even just by reading the book, we might be folding into someone else's plans just as they expected. Yeah, Savathun might have planted this here with an entire idea in mind that feeds into one of her plots and schemes and plans, and I don't know what that is, but at this point, even in death, I don't trust the Witch Queen. If there's anything that we should all be wary of, it's perhaps that. With all that being said, and with all those warnings about the potential lack of veracity to this entry, let's go ahead and read it. But what does it reveal really quickly? Well, it seems to speak from the perspective of a much more contemporary Savathun. I say that because it describes the death of Oryx, but also describes that moment as being a long time ago. Given that Savathun here seems to have a mostly complete recollection of her memories, I think it is likely from a time before she acquired the light, as well as after the death of Oryx. My best guess would be that this is then her thoughts just before she found Osiris and took his form deep in the Hellmouth. Regardless of the timing, these thoughts seem to be Savathun's direct perspective on the nature of her siblings. It's a fascinating read. It can be found in the second entry of the Sororicide Lawbook. It reads as follows. Verse 8-2. The Witch. We were the last surviving siblings. That's what this has always been about for Xivu Arath. She wanted us all to survive. She would throw everything she could at us so we could learn to survive. Didn't quite work, did it? My brother's greatest acts of navigation were his metamorphoses. That was his tactic. He would change everything about himself so he could survive this universe. Meanwhile, my sister cuts the universe apart, makes it as sharp as she, until all that's left is her and her love. I'm a little bit of both. No need to choose. I don't have my brother's fear or my sister's vanity. Even in his infinite adaptability, Oryx could not withstand the Guardians. So Xivu Arath wants to prove she can be as rigid and unyielding as she always has been. No need to fix what isn't broken. Overwhelming force, tactics, and intimidation. We are who we are, and we chose our morphs carefully. I wanted life. Xivu wanted vengeance and dominion. Oryx wanted to venture out, deep in thought, and feed on the delicacies of truth. Well, he got what he wanted. Now Oryx knows death more intimately than any of us. No bringing him back. Poor Xivu's distraught. With all that war and ruin to hide behind, she thinks she doesn't show it. Deep down, she believes Oryx must have survived through their logic. She believes that he'll be conjured back, just like he conjured us. That was a long time ago. We moved past that. Despite everything to come, I will live on, with and without them. Should I say that I miss my siblings? That I miss the times when the threats of death and short lifespan were still with us? When we piloted our needle? When we dove and became what we became? No. Xivu is the sentimental one. We are not who we were. Who we were no longer exists. I sound like my brother. I'm not sure what to make of this particular entry, given everything I talked about to do with veracity, but I think it does show us at least a little bit more about everything to do with Xivu Arath's motives in particular. Oryx has, in a strange way, fulfilled his purpose, narratively and personally. He now understands the final shape of death a little bit better, now that he is one with death, now that his essence lives on in our purpose and the touch of malice. But I do think that it most certainly is something that seems accurate, at least, to the character and motives behind Savathun. So maybe there is a little truth in here, maybe there isn't. I also think that it shows us about the importance of the bond between these three siblings. And I also believe this. Whilst perhaps we might be able to pry Xivu Arath away from the Witness, Xivu Arath will still be our enemy. She might forfeit the battle on the Witness's behalf, but now it's possible for all of us to differentiate between the sword logic and the final shape that it might lead to. Oryx was a fanatic of the final shape. After being shown the supposed truth of the universe by the Witness, he dedicated himself to it, and there's no question of that. It's perhaps this reason that allowed him to become the Taken King, and allowed him to wield some modicum of the Witness's power to shape all that was around him. But I think that it's a very different instance and case for Xivu Arath. Whilst Oryx desired secrets, Xivu desired strength and desired war. Xivu has always wanted, as Savathun stated, survival for her siblings above all else. The sword logic has allowed her a path to ensure that survival through the strength that she uses, even to the end of all things. It is a philosophy built in such a way as to be convenient as a tool for the Witness, but it is not the same as what the Witness would have the final shape be, where even the Hive cease to exist in their imperfection. Xivu's true test appears to then be this. Will she choose family or not? I suppose if Savathun is right, if she is the sentimentalist, our odds are good, but that doesn't mean that she won't fight us tooth and nail when all is done. The God of War was made for war. She chose her morph, and she chose her morph carefully. She knows the path that she walks, and she knows what the worm within her demands. War and subjugation of all those that do not obey the logic of the sword will be her path no matter what, unless she can somehow escape. And there is a way of doing that, but I don't believe it to be likely. For Xivu Arath, and for any Hive for that matter, to be freed of their worm and the purpose that it gives them, one can become a guardian. And the reason I say that is this. There are reports of Lucent Hive having realized that their worms no longer demand as much tithing of destruction personally when they have suddenly embraced the light. You can find these in the Lucent Moth records and the Lucent Tales lore books, and if you want I'll go into this in more detail. In fact, I think I will at some point later, because it's one of the most fascinating stories from the entirety of the Witch Queen expansion that I don't think I ever got to cover. Lucent Tales tells us that the Hive are in a place of change, having embraced the light. They no longer need to subjugate themselves to the pact of the worms. They no longer need a blood tithe. They can simply exist. And that might be the only way out. But even then, Xivu would not hear of it. I don't think for a second that the Hive God of War is going to be so easily stopped. With all that being said though, I do think that she might, with the knowledge in this entry, be motivated by family to turn away from the Witness. Even then, it's unclear. But that's all from me for the moment. We'll be breaking down more of the 8th Book of Sorrow as time goes on. If you enjoyed this video though, do go ahead and leave a like, and let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts in particular on whether this book can be trusted? I'm personally still on the fence. I do not know. Perhaps we'll see, given that Reset has just started and that this video is here on a Tuesday because maintenance isn't technically over yet. I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens, but maybe tomorrow there'll be a little update I can give you all on this story. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and also hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications and keep up with Destiny's lore. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Parodasya Arastra. I'll see you, Starside.